Back in the late 40s, early 50s, we had a big problem with Saudi Arabia. They were keeping the cash. They weren't putting it back into our economy, and we started to run shortages for cash at banks. So there was a meeting declared with the Grand Saudi King. Look here, boy, haven't you ever heard about investments and so on? Let us teach you how to do that. So now they don't keep a lot of cash. They invest it. They own Waldorf Astoria. They own a lot of America and a lot of other countries and a lot of businesses. And they have come to the realization that there is an end to their oil, so they have financed themselves into the business worlds of Europe and America and Latin America. They would no longer need oil for their revenue, and that will enable them to continue their uh, ex, expansion of Wahhabi Islam. So just quit doing the oil ain't going to do anything. And that fact's not known by very many people in this world, that they had this habit of keeping the money, putting it underneath the mattress, and that ran our bank short of cash. So we taught them investment strategies. We cut our own throat, in other words, Jamaica.
With Putin, the fact is that Putin's Russia and the European Union, they're engaged in a race against time, and the question is which one will collapse first. And the Putin regime faces bankruptcy in 2017 when a large part of its foreign debt matures and political turmoil may erupt sooner than that. The president's popularity, which remains high, rests on a social compact requiring the government to deliver financial stability. They can't even pay their debts. And Russia's budget deficit is running at 7% GDP, and they need to cut it to 3% to survive. So there could be a lot of turmoil within Russia itself, and the most effective way Putin's regime can avoid collapse is by causing the EU to collapse sooner. And this is why Obama and David Cameron are so desperate to stay within the European Union, because it's quite possible that if we leave the European Union on Thursday, the European Union could topple like tin soldiers, and then there would be a problem. So that's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to point out as well, it was a speaker that brought it up about Tartus in Syria, and the hold that Russia has in that country. I mean, what they have in Syria is unbelievable, but they have that deep water port. It's not only a warm water port, it's deep enough to take a nuclear submarine, and it has access then to South America unhindered. But there is a problem, and I thought about this when Turkey blew the Russian plane out of the sky. I thought there was going to be a war, and legally what Erdogan can do is close the Turkish straits. And what would happen then, Speaker? Would Putin's naval base be trapped? You know, how do they get back to Russia? This is one funny thing. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up as well, very, very quickly, what I want to bring up is the fact that in 2013 there was riots in Istanbul regarding the Gezi Park. Erdogan announced that he wanted to put on this park a shopping mall, etc., etc., and people protested, and he used quite a bit of violence towards those people. Well, at the weekend, he announced that he's announced at the weekend that he now intends to go ahead with the project in the city's Taksim district, and he wants to build luxury flats and a shopping centre on the park, modelled on the Ottoman era military barracks that used to stand in on that park. So there should be going to see a lot of riots again, because those people are determined that he's not going to touch that park. It should be quite interesting next week.
Well, Carol, that's why I said earlier that it appears to me that it's in Putin's best interest for the EU to collapse. I absolutely think that refugee crisis has been helping him, and I mean, and clearly has been exacerbated by Russian intervention. So I don't see how I mean they're funding all these groups. They're funding the communist parties in Turkey. They're funding groups in Greece, Germany, France. So I don't see how it wouldn't benefit Putin for the EU to fall to pieces. I mean, the Russian ruble, just trying to think, I would say 4 years, it was like 4.2 cents per ruble. Now it's down to like 1.5. I think it's like 66 to 1 now. It's absolutely collapsing. And I think that if the EU doesn't collapse, I think that they're going to default. Russia will default. I don't know how they're going to handle the economic situation, but I don't see it. I don't see it to Putin's benefit to settle anything in Syria. He might be saying that. He also said 2 weeks ago that he's pulling all his troops out there. He's not doing that. I mean, I actually saw people in the rooms celebrating that Obama beat Putin now. I mean, I'm just like looking at it, and it's astonishing. Now, I remember carrying Obama one day a couple of years ago. They made a statement on TV. What does Putin think? This is the 18th century. I was like, yeah, he does. I mean, I'm like, how do these people not understand what they're playing with? I mean, they don't understand anything they're doing. I think it was Cassandra talking about Trump being a reactionary. Well, that might be, but what is the West doing with him? I mean, there's no rhyme or reason for what they're doing. There's no diplomatic relationship that supports anything that they're doing when it comes to Russia. And Smika's right about the Crimea. Why did the world make such a big story out of it? They had a 50-year lease on the port of Sevastopol, 50 years with 42 left. So why the West is so incensed of what Putin did? They had an election. The Crimea is autonomous. The people of Crimea had a decision whether or not they would stay with Ukraine or Russia. The Ukrainian government had no control over that. So why they would be so upset and outraged, I just can't figure it out. And why wouldn't Putin want to protect the port? I just don't get it. I mean, the only problem with Crimea, in my opinion, with Russia is they've had to cross the border into Ukraine, and then the separatists have gained control of that whole area. I mean, they talked about for decades. They've talked about building a bridge over the Sea of Azov, which is very expensive. So I guess that's what prevented them from doing it. But it's a humanitarian crisis created, and Kiev has mishandled, in my opinion. They've totally mishandled. I mean, just like in a humorous way, I look at it like this: Russia spends $100 billion a year on the military. Ukraine spends $1 billion. So how many times is $100 billion going to $1 billion? Well, the answer is as many times as it wants to with nothing left over. So I just don't understand what they're doing over there. The Kiev is really putting their people in a really, really bad crisis. And I just view Kiev as a black hole for money coming in and the politicians stealing it. I mean, Yushchenko, my God, that guy, his underling, his right-hand man was the biggest mafia criminal in Donetsk. And I think his son was a dentist or a doctor. He's like one of the richest people in Ukraine now. So when they asked Yushchenko how did his son get rich, he said, well, he's a great businessman. Oh, really? By stealing all the money from the people?
See, Billy, you immediately assumed it was Bernie Sanders sending out that email for $100,000. Bernie Sanders doesn't do that. He asked us for $20 or $15 or $5. Donald Trump sent out an email asking for $100,000. A multi-billionaire is asking for $100,000 in donations to combat Hillary Clinton's campaign. Really? And
I know
keep in mind.
You took your checkbook right out, didn't you, David?
Did I what?
You took your checkbook right out and wrote him a big fat check.
Who, Donald Trump? No, I didn't write a check for Donald Trump. I sent Bernie Sanders money, though. Sure I did. I sent Tim Canova money also.